Several Iranian radar stations along the southern coast began losing contact with their command centers late in the night. One after another, surveillance networks stopped transmitting reliable data. Air defense operators suddenly found themselves working with incomplete information. If those systems remained disrupted, large sections of Iran's airspace would effectively become unguarded. Within hours, the first strikes began. This raises an important question. How did a country with hundreds of combat aircraft and a layered air defense system lose control of its own skies so quickly? To understand what happened, we need to look at how the operation was designed and why the system meant to protect Iran as airspace failed under pressure. Iran's defensive network is built around several layers. Radar stations monitor long distances across the Persian Gulf and inland regions. Information from these sensors feeds into command centers that coordinate surface-to-air missile systems and direct fighter aircraft toward incoming threats. If the radar network functions properly, interceptors can be launched before hostile aircraft reach key targets. If the network fails, aircraft on the ground lose early warning protection. The opening phase of the operation focused precisely on that vulnerability. According to statements from Dan Kane, chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, the campaign began with what he described as non-kinetic effects. These measures targeted communication links, radar networks, and command infrastructure before any aircraft crossed into Iranian airspace. Cyber operations and electronic warfare disrupted Iran's ability to track incoming threats. Command networks struggled to maintain coordination. By the time physical strikes began, parts of the defense system were already degraded. This shift created the first turning point. Without reliable radar coverage, the Iranian air defense network could not respond as a unified system. That change opened the door for the next phase of the operation. Once the radar network was weakened, strikes began targeting Iranian airbases. Satellite imagery later showed damaged infrastructure at several locations, including facilities near Konarak and radar installations close to Zahedan. Aircraft positioned on runways and in hardened shelters were hit before they could be launched. Some of the aircraft affected included models such as the F-4 Phantom II, the F-14 Tomcat, and the F-5 Tiger II. These aircraft represent some of the most capable fighters still operated by Iran, but many of them never left the ground. Analysts reviewing strike footage released by U.S. Central Command observed that multiple airbases were targeted almost simultaneously. Aircraft positioned for possible sorties were destroyed while still parked or preparing for departure. This development had an immediate consequence. If aircraft cannot launch, they cannot challenge incoming bombers or intercept cruise missiles. Control of the airspace begins to shift to whichever side can operate without resistance. Within the first day of operations, a large portion of Iran's combat aircraft inventory had either been damaged or forced to remain grounded. That loss significantly reduced Iran's ability to contest the skies. Following the early strikes, U.S. military leadership stated that the campaign had achieved localized air superiority. Air superiority does not mean complete control of the sky. It means the opposing force can no longer operate effectively within contested airspace. This shift allowed additional aircraft to enter Iranian airspace with reduced risk. Reports indicated that aircraft such as the F-15E Strike Eagle, F-16 Fighting Falcon, and F-35 Lightning II were able to operate over target areas after the initial phase of the campaign. Once this threshold is crossed, the strategic situation changes. Air superiority allows bombers and strike aircraft to target infrastructure, missile launchers, and military facilities more freely. That appears to have been the next objective. While airbases were being targeted, additional strikes focused on Iran's surface-to-air missile systems. Iran maintains a mix of air defense platforms, including domestically produced systems and variants based on foreign designs. Among them is the Bavar 373 air defense system, which was developed as an alternative to Russia's S-300 missile system. Other components include systems derived from Chinese technology such as the HQ-7 surface-to-air missile system. However, maintaining a large and integrated defense network requires consistent supply chains, spare parts, and reliable communications. Years of sanctions had already created maintenance challenges across Iran's military infrastructure. As a result, some systems were operating with limited missile stocks or aging components. When electronic disruption and precision strikes began targeting command centers and launch platforms, the network struggled to coordinate an effective response. This marked another turning point. Without reliable coordination between radar stations, missile batteries, and fighter aircraft, the defense system could not operate as a unified shield. Individual launchers could still fire missiles, but the broader defensive structure was weakened. Even before the operation began, Iran's Air Force faced structural limitations. The fleet included several legacy aircraft originally delivered decades ago, including approximately dozens of F-4 Phantom II and F-14 Tomcat fighters, alongside Soviet-designed aircraft such as the MiG-29 fighter and Su-24 bomber. Maintaining aircraft of this age requires constant access to spare parts and technical support. Sanctions have made both difficult to obtain. As a result, only a portion of the fleet was considered fully operational even before the strikes began. Some aircraft were kept on the ground to serve as spare parts sources for others. That meant the number of aircraft actually available for combat operations was significantly lower than the official fleet size might suggest. When the airbase strikes began, the margin for response was already limited. Within a short period, several developments occurred simultaneously. Radar networks were disrupted. Airbases were struck before aircraft could launch. Air defense systems lost coordination, and many of the aircraft that might have responded were already limited by age and maintenance challenges. Together, these factors created a cascade of failures. The system designed to protect Iranian airspace was overwhelmed before it could organize a coordinated response. With the Air Force largely grounded, Iran increasingly relied on unmanned systems such as drones to maintain pressure on regional targets. Drone attacks were reported against locations across the Gulf region, including bases in countries such as Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. But drones alone cannot replace a conventional air force. Without reliable fighter coverage or a fully functioning air defense network, Iran's ability to control its own airspace was significantly reduced. The opening phase of the conflict fundamentally changed the balance of power in the air. By degrading radar networks, targeting air bases, and disrupting air defense coordination, U.S. and Israeli forces created conditions that allowed them to operate over Iranian territory with fewer constraints. Iran still retains missile systems and drone capabilities. Those tools continue to pose risks to regional targets. But the loss of effective control over the air domain changes how the conflict can unfold. Air superiority allows continued strikes against infrastructure and military assets while limiting the opponent's ability to respond in kind. In strategic terms, the opening operation shifted the contest from a balanced air confrontation to a situation where one side now operates with far greater freedom of action in the skies.